Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Jonathan, and thank you so much for the SWDDP for inviting us today. Yes, so my name is Jade, and I'm an assistant research support librarian at the University of Bristol. So my background was in manuscript studies and archives, and then about 5 years ago, I made the switch over to research data, so research support, digital scholarship, things like that. So today, I'm going to talk about what is research data and some practical guidance on organising your files. I have ever so slightly tricked you though today. So the guidance I'm going to be offering is framed around open research practices. So some of you might be familiar with that term and some of you not so much. If you were at Kate Holmes' session, forgive me because I am going to go through a kind of brief introduction about what is open research and what the benefits are. And then I'll go into talking about what is research data management guidance, and also collecting and storing sensitive data, sharing research data, and then also where you can find support like outside of your supervisory team. So first off, open research then is a movement to improve research culture and rigor of research by making it transparent and open as possible. I have a lovely little wheel here, which Utrecht University has made and shared with a CC BY license as well. So it basically just it's reframing research. So instead of research informing what society should do, it's about research and society and education working together for change for the greater good. Through then accessibility of research and making the production of knowledge more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. It kind of takes that disability studies ethos of no research about us without us to its like logical progression. So that's sort of through like cooperation instead of competition and like inclusive teams, accessibility. There are kind of like main practices associated with open research, and usually that's what you're going to find support for in your institutions as well. So we've got research data management, which is pretty much what it says on the tin, and it's what I'm going to be talking about more today. There's also pre-registration and registered support, registered reports. So that's when you kind of specify your research plan in advance of your study and then publicly register it, either in a repository like Open Science Framework, or you can also do it as a journal article as well in some journals. And then also preprints. So they are earlier version of scholarly articles. So these are going to be maybe the submitted manuscript then before they go through kind of peer review and things like that. So these can be uploaded to preprint servers and they make them freely available to others. A really good example of that was during the pandemic. So a lot of COVID-19 research went out first as preprints, just so kind of acceleration of the research. So more people could know about it. Also, then we've got open code and software. So open source software is publicly accessible and has open license source code is available for review, adaptation, and reuse. By making your code and software accessible, others then can kind of more easily reproduce your research results. Open access is academic research that is published online, free of charge for reading, reuse, and sharing. Again, if you didn't catch Kate Holmes' session on demystifying the publishing process and open access, I'd recommend going back and giving a watch of that. And again, sorry if you did, because now this is kind of the same. It's a brief refresher, though, I promise. And then we've got some authorship tools. So these are credit taxonomy, which is used to recognize all authors' contributions to the production and publication of research. So you might see that on journal articles where authors are credited under like data curation, project administration, writing, things like that. And then ORCID is a free, unique, persistent identifier, and that ensures that you're being accredited to your output. So it's kind of like a research profile that follows you around to whatever institution you're at. When these are shared around, there are like little links on each of those images that kind of go to little primer videos, which have been made by the UK Reproducibility Network, which is also a really good resource to check out as well. So what are the benefits? So by focusing on transparency and accessibility means naturally that your work is going to be better organised. And that also then goes on to prevent duplication of effort. So whether that's if you're working with a team and you've already set up like a collaboration space, so you're all working from the same place, or maybe it's reusing other researchers' data. It also increases research visibility and validity. So by making your research more accessible, naturally means more people are going to read it. And by publishing kind of your underlying data, maybe your methods, means more people can read, reuse, reproduce your methods and findings as well. Also employability. By engaging in this now, I think really good. Yeah, it helps your employability. A lot of us, as you can see from the start, have researcher backgrounds. So whether that's going into research support or maybe things to do with research culture, but there's also stuff with like funders, publishing, and advocacy work as well. Also, the kind of valuing and recognizing process. So the main thing I hope you take away today is that datas are publications too. Please put them on your CVs and shout about them. So why should we share research data? So you'd kind of have to also. So a lot of funders policies do expect you to share research data. So there's UKRI, Wellcome, Royal Society, NIHR. A lot of institutions also have open research policies. So staff are expected to, and PGRs are normally encouraged to share their research data. Also publishers, so when you're publishing a journal or monograph, usually expect a statement describing where the associated data is and the access conditions for that data. And as we were saying as well, it's best practice. So a lot of research is publicly funded, therefore it should be available to everyone. It also adds transparency to your process, supports reproducibility and reuse, and also it helps verify research findings. So essentially, it prevents this. And this, 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 that one, that, that, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. This isn't just people being stripped of awards. There's like real kind of real life impact in kind of falsification and manipulation of data. So you get millions invested in medical research on the back of selected or manipulated data. The biggest one is probably the MMR vaccine linked to autism. But there was also in the last few years there was a specific protein buildup that was identified as the cause of Alzheimer's, which ended up ended up being retracted. There's also kind of economic and political decisions. So there is a paper by Reynolds and Roghoff called the Growth in Times of Debt paper, which influenced sort of the Cameron Osborne government and European Commission as well. When researchers went back to that paper and tried to reproduce the results, they failed. They found a lot of the raw data and they'd been quite selective, so they'd excluded some data or they'd manipulated averages. There was also some coding mistakes that were identified as well. Several economics now believe that countries implemented austerity policies too early and too severely based on that paper. So these aren't isolated incidents. And papers are being retracted at a higher rate every year. You might see now in some journals that publishers are kind of tagging articles being under investigation. And like with the rise of AI generated data as well, that kind of brings its own worrying incidents like to the field that people have to be looking out for as well. But I promise you it's not all doom and gloom. It also sort of, celebrate your process. So methods and findings are often invisible or not acknowledged when the kind of thesis or your publication is your end goal. And this isn't something that we see in research. It's something you see every day around you. It's the kind of movie montage on a film or like the social kind of media highlight reel. There's so much stuff that kind of glosses over that process. And there are kind of studies out there that have focused on process and realized that by doing that, instead of that end goal, it's lead to sustained engagement at lower levels of procrastination and kind of higher outcomes at the end of it. There's a really great TED talk by Lee Bodago, who, if you like fantasy books, please check out Ninth House. It's called The Art of Discomfort. In that, she says that the job of the artist is not to skip to the good part. The job of the artist is to make art. And that is so applicable to research. When I look back at my own time doing my PhD, I wish I'd spent less time kind of worrying about what came next and just enjoying the process of doing research more. It's the reason why we're all here. You're interested, invested in that topic. And it's also really useful to remember that you can have data without information, but you cannot have information without data. data is the crux of your research. And I am a nerd and I do have that on a tote bag because it is one of my favorite data quotes. uh, so then, what is your data? So the question that we get asked a lot by people is, yeah, what is my data? A lot of people come to us and they say they don't have data. Pretty much everyone has data. Well, everyone has data. It may not necessarily own or create your own data, but trust me, you have data. So what is it? So research data is created or used as part of research. It's usually born digital or digitized. It underpins the research claim, and it may have high reuse value also to unrelated disciplines as well. So examples that can be documents, you see text, CSV, docs, stuff like that, interview transcripts, photographs, videos, audio recordings, 3D scans, models, online survey results. It's a whole wide variety of things that can be data. Um, but how does that translate then into a data publication at the end of your project? So I've just got like 3 examples here that kind of show a wide, I hope a wide example of what constitutes a data publication. So this one is from Mark Hibbett. It's Data and Dr. Doom from the University of Arts London. This was based on his PhD thesis, Dr. Doom in the Marvel Age. This data set then includes a spreadsheet analysis of Dr. Doom's appearances, titles, dialogues, etc. in 266 texts. It's got an explanatory file about data collection and description, a comparison data set on Dennis the Menace, and a results for fan survey as well, including a blank version of the questionnaire. So Dr. Hibbert also maintained a process blog where he reviewed each comic and what he learned during data collection, including suggested data cleaning methods. And he wrote a really great article on the data collection. You can see there, tracking a wandering character through data. We talked about, yeah, how important then the data cleaning was, standardization, and how much that made a difference when he came to like linkage analysis and data reuse. So he got a publication out of just being really good at research data management. And I think as well, this is a really good example of how to create thematic data sets on copyrighted material, which obviously cannot be shared, or also maybe material in the public domain, which for sustainability reasons, you don't need to be depositing elsewhere, but you probably have really rich data sets or spreadsheets like that you've got from that analysis. The next one is Russell Jago's How Do You Move project. So this was a study that focused on the communication of physical activity guidelines to underserved communities. So they wanted messages from like everyday people of how to stay active. So they interviewed local people on how they stayed active. So the data set includes 4 video interviews, a blank participant information sheet and consent form, a study summary, and a practice guidance, licensing text, and explanatory README. And it demonstrates what you can do if you get your consent right. And we work on projects like this quite often. So we've worked on a study that was co-producing music and accompanying dance. We made sure that the participants were clear that they were going to be identified at the end of that in the outcome. So then those videos could be accessible to the public, and also the performers can reuse them for their portfolios. Obviously, this is extremely study dependent, but it's something maybe to consider if you're doing advocacy work or maybe sort of oral histories. The last one then is T.D. Sanders from University of Leicester, sorry. And this was the Beyond the Gaze project. This was a 3-year project running from 2015 to 2018, and examined the working practices of online sex workers in the UK. So it used a participatory research methodology. So it interviewed sex workers, customers, police, and policymakers. The research has produced some of the largest data sets in the world on online sex work. The data set itself is available via application through the UK Data Service, just due to the sensitive nature of the material. But that isn't the only research data that was produced. So the team have also shared blank copies of the survey questions, a study protocol, impact evaluation, briefing reports, practice guidance for other researchers doing similar work, and also safety and privacy guidance for online sex workers. There's 2 things to consider when you're kind of working on projects like this, especially like we've been using data and publishing it. So there's the ethical considerations of repeatedly interviewing vulnerable people. And then, of course, the kind of potential harm of data sharing outweighing the benefits of data sharing. But said, if you ever thinking about that, look down to the restricted views and speak to your local library teams about it. But it also kind of demonstrates that sharing methodology and practice is just as important as the results. It adds transparency and clarity to your research, and it also offers reflection and guidance for future studies. But what is the main thing here? Your start. Oh, sorry.
I've just
yeah.
Sorry. I've just got a question that I think might be a good point to input.
Yeah.
So you might want to have a quick click on the Q&A because it is a little bit of a long one.
Okay, sorry guys. I can't actually see. Yeah, it doesn't ping up for some reason. Let me just. I've lost my start bar.
It's essentially a question about I think how to deal with archived websites where finding documents, linking to documents is challenging. So
let's have a look. I have a question about the type of data I use in my research is based on documents submitted to the Planning Inspectorate website, which are publicly available. However, these documents are archived every 10 years, making them difficult to access. The archive website is not easily accessible to everyone, is poorly organized, and locating is very challenging. As a result, I would not have to cite them, providing a working link once they have been archived. Can these documents still be considered open access data? So off the top of my head, I'm not familiar myself with that Planning Inspectorate website. So I think the best thing to do would be to speak to your local research support team, so they can look into it and see what the terms of use and conditions are, especially if they are archiving it every 10 years and what the kind of expectations of that is. It may be the case, that you could speak to them and see about creating something based on that. But I think it's a conversation you probably need to have with your local team and also the people running the website as well. Sorry, that's not entirely a yes or no answer, but I think with stuff like that, with very specific questions, it's always best to reach out, ask the people who run the website and also your local research support team as well. Is there any other questions? Or is it okay?
No other questions at the moment.
No other. Okay, thank you. Sorry. If there are any other questions, then feel free, Kate, to just interrupt me because unfortunately I can't see this screen at all. There we go. Okay. So the main thing that we always sort of hammer home is your start impacts what you can share. And so what you should be thinking about from the very beginning of your project is good data management, and also if you're working with human participants, informed consent. So data management plan, that's really where you need to start. So a data management plan outlines the management of project data. So this is what type of data you'll generate. So file types, number of the files, anticipated size, things like that. How you're going to organize and describe your data. So thinking about naming conventions, version controls, data dictionaries, metadata standards. So the sort of data about your data. So creator, date, things like that. I always sort of think about, so the data is a book, and then the catalog record is going to be the metadata. Or if you're in a museum, the work of art on the wall is the data, and then the metadata is that little plaque next to it, which kind of tells you the title, when it was made, who it was by, and a short description. And then where that data is going to be stored, maintained long-term and shared. So retention guidance of research data typically spans between a minimum of 10 to 20 years, depending on the research project. So it's best to think about storage and SARIN solutions early on, and also then ensure that you've got secure university storage and appropriate research data repository chosen as well. Which data will be shared and why, and if there's any kind of period of exclusive use. So you want to be thinking about copyright or ethical restrictions. Do you have consent to share this? Is it commercially sensitive? It's very timely, that question. About who are you going to be asking about those questions. And again, things that if you've co-produced, what about intellectual property right? If you're funded, so typical funder exclusive use period is about 12 months, which basically means that within 12 months of your grant ending, that's when you're expected to share your research data. Usually funders require a DMP at application stage. The word count varies. So some is like 1,500, and then some you'll get like a really short 500-word plan. What we always suggest is that you think about all the different questions and write a longer plan and then condense it, because then you have your data management plan sorted. You've got a concise plan, you've thought about everything, and you can refer back to it throughout your project. DMP Online is a really great tool. Lots of universities have their own like version of it as well, so they have their own like templates and scope notes, but it has funder and standard templates and scope notes for each section, and it also is shareable and exportable as well for people that you want to review your plan, or if you're working in a team as well. And it's just a really useful tool. You can build it up like question by question, and it's just really easy to use and straightforward. So I did usually have like a little game, but Menti was not playing ball. So I do have an example of data and metadata to sort of talk about. Meet Frankie and my very permanently muddy kitchen floor. So the data here is the photograph of my dog Frankie, and then the metadata, we've got file name, author, date, time, what it's been created with, who is it, and a description. So when you're like talking about file name and versioning, you want to be thinking about the administration, so who and what is created it, but also that descriptive, like what is it? And you don't have to save like overly descriptive files. Explore the kind of details tab in properties when you've got like images and documents, because you can add information in there about subject, as well as kind of tag it with different, like, so say you're working on a specific project, you could tag everything in that project with that, easily searchable then. And you can also add comments and things like that. So the next, I've just got a breakdown then of those kind of good research management things and what you need to be thinking about. So as you were saying, as I was just saying, you need to be deciding on like versioning, file name conventions, a logical folder structure, keywords. You are the first user of your data. So you need to find things throughout your project. And also if you're working in a team, others need to find it as well. So you need to be thinking about those things very early on so you're all on the same page. Saving, so think about suitable formats when you're creating. So that could be like industry agreed formats then, but maybe thinking about open formats for storage and sharing, so such as CSV or RTF. That's kind of due to like the long-term longevity and also accessibility of formats. Also encrypting any sensitive data. So you can use, there's a software called 7-Zip, which you can then also store passwords and keys as well on, but ensure they're separate from your research data as well. Also then documenting your data, as we just described. So describe descriptive metadata. So what is it? Structural, how is it organized? Administrative, when and who created it? Again, it's just so you and others can always understand your data. Checking your data. So conducting quality checks for data loss or corruption. If you're in a team, you could get a second pair of eyes on that. But if you're not, I really recommend using something called checksums. There are free tools that you can like download with that, and it's essentially just it's like a thumbprint of a document, and it checks for like data integrity, and it will kind of flag up basically as any corruptions. Really useful if you're working on really big spreadsheets, because I've had that in the past as well, like large spreadsheet, and every every few months it would just corrupt. So yeah, definitely recommend checksums, and also then backing up your data and version it as well. So it's not just about that. I'm thinking about that large spreadsheet in particular. So every few days I would essentially make a new version because I just was worried it was always gonna, so some kind of rogue Excel thing was going to just corrupt it. And yeah, backing up. So making sure that you're always using university network storage, not personal portable storage such as USBs or PCs or hard drives, things like that, just due to the higher risk of data loss associated with them. We've all been there. We've all lost something that we've been working on. So just don't add the extra stress to your work when you have this supported network at your disposal in your institutions and organizations. And again, just to hammer in the point, university secure networks, kind of like the OneDrive, SharePoint, departmental file stores, those sort of things. Those are the best place that you want to be keeping your work. We always think keep it in the castle walls, so make sure it is in the castle walls. Okay, you might be thinking this is just so obvious. Like, why is she talking about this? Because we all do it. I don't know if these images look familiar, but they do for me. It's just clicking, saving things on your desktop, not having a convention when you're naming things and thinking, right, this is it, this is the final one, and then you're several versions later and it's called final, 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 final. Or in my case, theses with corrections latest, theses with corrections. And I also had so many notes documents as well, just called like random junk or untitled. I'm sharing my shame. These are images of manuscripts, but would you know that? It took me so long at the end of my PhD to just decipher these images, and it was just far too late into my studies as well. If you would think that you'd go in and at least like the numbering would be kind of on point. I'm just taking pictures of each page, but I was like zooming in, or I was skipping bits and only take, so even that sort of completely threw me off. Yeah, I would have, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, I would have had to revisit archives, which would cost me money and time as well. Again, you are the first user of your data and you'll be trying to find things throughout this project. So it's got to be findable and understandable for years. So yeah, what you do at the start really is going to impact how you're finishing it. So I have some top tips. The earlier you start, the better. When it's fresh in your head, like if you've gone on an archive trip or to a museum or something like that, just when it's fresh in your head, that is when there's the best time to start doing anything. Meaningful but brief file names, as I said before, like you don't have to be over descriptive because you can use that metadata to bring in that kind of background information. Use dates in the format year, month, day. That's easier for when you're kind of trying to find things and yeah, organizing it. Record session numbers, pages, unique identifiers. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the title if that's not your convention, but definitely put it into like the comments or the descriptions. Have it there so when you look back, you don't have to keep like hunting around or going back to archives. Hopefully not. Yeah, you just know it's all there. Keep a data dictionary. If you're using any shorthand, especially in titles, maybe for archives and museums, chances are you're not going to remember them, not throughout your project, or maybe even if you're going to reuse that data later on and you go back to it. So keep a data dictionary so you have all that information to hand. Also, you can use software to help you. So there's things which they do like bulk renaming, bulk rename utility, AMP renamer for Mac. But also like the referencing software is really useful, kind of storing and organizing your referencing into groups, but also giving them like key terms as well, just to kind of make it easier for you to search for stuff. And note Mendeley, Zatoro, things like that. So there's information out there on everyone's like, institutional organization web pages, but there's also a really good learning hub for UK data service as well on research data management, and that has a whole load more tips and advice on how to organize, version, and document your data. So the next session then, yes.
So I've got a question in, which is, could you please specify the best practices and specific tools for version control? Excel files, manuscripts, R, Python scripts, etc.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get this so I can actually think things up. So I'm going to be honest, guys, off the top of my head, I can't think of any specific tools. But practices is just basically going, looking at what your kind of goal is, what your process is. So thinking about, yeah, when are you going to go back and sort of back up your data or like make copies, or thinking about those times in the process, yeah, where you need to think about the versioning. Like I was saying before about when I was working on that really large spreadsheet, it was, I mean, it did come from the experience of things getting corrupted or lost along the way. Yeah, and it was basically just about thinking about when was the best time that I knew I was going to be working on something and I wanted to back up that certain thing. Also about key times in processes as well. So there was things that people were also working on. So we had like working copies and then also searching copies. So it's about thinking about really what the kind of needs are for your project. But again, what I will say is the UK Data Service has some really, really good guidance about all those specific things, yeah, about versioning documented. So it's definitely worth giving that website a look as well. I'm going to look at the other question as well. I think that was already answered. Sorry, okay. Then there's another question about when a company publishes some of their data publicly, do we need their consent to use and analyze our data for our research? So if a company is publishing their data, usually on their website, it'll have a terms of use and conditions if it's not published with like a clear license. So if it's something, for example, published with like a CC BY license, then that is, you can use and redistribute and yeah, analyze that data for your research. There are some things though where, so yeah, the terms and conditions of most websites will tell you what you can do with their data. If you have any issues or you can't really decipher anything, either kind of contact your local research data management team, or you can also contact the website of the company themselves as well. But they usually have information on their website of what you can do with that data.
So we've had one more quickly come in, which is, could you clarify / elaborate on what is meant by record accession numbers, pages, unique identifiers?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so a session number then is usually what you find in an archive. So it's like a unique identifier, so you can find that file or folder amongst all their other stuff. And then also page numbers from like books or yeah, and things like that. And yeah, a unique identifier is essentially an example again is like a DOI on a journal article. It's something that is a unique to that item or object, just to make it easy, accessible and findable and discoverable as well. Is that all the questions, Kate?
Yes.
Fab. Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. So the next session then, it's just going to discuss organising and sharing sensitive data. So that's going to apply to studies working with human participants. And then my slides have been really slow. There we go. So informed consent. So the wrong consent can seriously impact data sharing and manuscript publication. And ethical consent to participate in a study does not consent for data processing under GDPR. So essentially, if someone agrees to take part in your study, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can, yeah, share that data. So to just demonstrate the point. I've got some examples of clauses that we've seen in consent forms. So I just want you to imagine then you're a participant and I've given you a consent form to take part in my study, and it says the following. This is on Menti, so it might take, there we go. So I think, Kate, if you don't mind popping the link in the chat, and then hopefully people should be able to join either with the QR code or using the code. If anyone wants to maybe give me a thumbs up when you're ready. That's a lot of thumbs up. Okay, we will go on. Right, so I want you to think about then what type of data is being referred to in these statements. And I will apologize, I have to start it every time. So I understand my data will be kept confidential and that only the research team will be able to access information about me. So do people think that's personal information, research data, or are you unsure? Have a mix of answers. A lot of people saying personal information. Yeah. Okay, I think that's pretty steady. So most of you think personal information. There are some saying research data and some that are a bit unsure. Okay, what about this statement? I understand the data may be used by other researchers after the project ends for work unrelated to this project. So do you think that's personal information, research data, or are you unsure? Again, yeah, most people think research data. A few of you not so sure or think it might be personal information. The majority, yeah, I think it's research data. Okay, right. So really, data on its own is kind of meaningless. You might as well say banana. Like without a qualifier, data just becomes meaningless. You need to really specify clearly what kind of data trance that you're talking about. So whether that's personal information that you're going to be keeping confidential and only the research team is going to be able to access, or whether that's research data, which then may be used by other researchers after the project ends for unrelated research, work unrelated to the project. So throughout, you want to be separating personal information and research data into two really clear data tranches because they are going to have different access requirements, different storage requirements, and also different retention requirements and destruction requirements as well. We sort of visualize it as like a thermometer. So the hotter the temperature, that's the kind of most confidential information. So that's going to be personal information used for the project or keeping contact for future projects, which under GDPR you can't retain for longer than is necessary for the original purpose it was collected. You've also then got the kind of cooler stuff, so the anonymized research data that can be shared openly. There are like woolly edges, but it just sort of helps to visualize the kind of different data trances, storage, access, and retention requirements. So I have some more questions. Who has access to this data? And I've
We
been
just had
quite
one
mean. Oh,
quick
yeah.
question, which is,
Yeah.
are demographics personal data or research data?
Demographics. So it depends it's depending on your study. So if you're doing information where you are, interviewing people or doing a survey and you are collecting demographic information, it becomes research data. So research data can be sensitive data. It can be things like, age, yeah, it can be those indirect and direct identifiers. Personal information is that kind of administration data that you're using to conduct your study. So it's things like a list of names or contact details or email addresses of who to contact. It's that data that will never leave the study. It's only being used to conduct the study. Is that clear? Is there any other questions that have come in?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Oh, wait, sorry, there's another one, Boone.
Yeah.
Should demographics be separate from interviews or not?
Should demographics be separate from interviews? I think I need more information. That do you mean? I'm not quite sure what that question.
Recordings of transcripts.
So if you, oh, okay, so if you are getting information and right, okay, I understand what you mean. So you're asking, should the demographic information, you get that in like a separate document or a separate survey compared to when you're interviewing people? It's entirely up to you. That's entirely up to you. The only thing I would say is that if you're doing, and we have seen this in consent forms, is do not include that in your consent form. Those are completely different things. in the consent form, it has to be just a very, straightforward, this is your consent to the study. If you want to collect that information separate to the outside of the interviews, that's fine, as long as it kept separate from the consent form. Okay.
Great.
Fab, thank you. So yeah, I've got two more questions of who has access to this data, and like I said, I've been quite mean because I've taken away the unsure option. So the first one we have is, I understand my research data will be publicly available for other researchers. So is that going to be available to everyone, internal researchers or all researchers? Most people think all researchers. We've got some everyone, some internal researchers. Yes. So yeah, I was mean because really you you don't know. Research data can't be publicly available and also available to a specific group. So it's either or. It's either publicly available or it can be available to researchers. If it's going to be made open, you can't then restrict of who has access to it. And the next question we have. So I understand my research data will be archived for future studies. Again, coming back to that term archive that we had earlier. So yeah, who has access? Everyone, researchers, study team. Yeah, most people think researchers. Again, it's kind of like, I don't know, because archived is one of those terms that it can mean to some people that you're going to share it with everyone, and then to other people, like the example we had in the question earlier, it could mean that it's going to be kept kind of behind the scenes, or maybe even, so if you think about when you archive like an email from your inbox, I mean, it's one of those things that you just sort of, you don't think about again, do you? Or then sometimes it could be that you're gonna, keep it under lock and key somewhere, or it's going to be available. So it's one of those unclear terms. So what we always say is like, use plain language to kind of clearly explain that data access. It's kind of thinking about that like a medicine bottle. It's got to be simple and easy to understand. Okay.
We've had one other question come in, which is, what is the appropriate retention period for audio files and interview data stored on university servers?
So again, it's going to depend on what you're kind of what you're saying with your consent. With things like that, so it's usually not typical from experience of like working in the studies. It's usually not typical for people to retain the audio files if you're making like an anonymized transcript, and it's definitely not common to be sharing those files unless it's really clear in the consent and there's like a reason why you're going to be doing that, maybe like an oral history thing. So if you were keeping that as part, and the same with goes with the video file. So if you are keeping that as part of the research data, if you're making in the transcript case an anonymized transcript, then you can delete it after you've made the transcript. Or if you think that there is going to be further reuse of that, then you can keep it, up to 10 to 20 years. Is that kind of research data retention guidance. But again, it's up to you of what you're kind of considering with that. And you've also got to consider, again, what's in that consent form, because when you come back to storing that research data, unless you've got consent to store something that has personal identification, so that, if someone's voice is inherently going to be identifiable, and if you've got a video there which obviously has someone's face, that's you've got to have consent to then retain that for that period. Otherwise, like under GDPR, you should be only retaining research data which is pseudo-anonymized, so has already gone through that kind of anonymization process, unless you've got the consent in place. Again, all these things, like your local research support team, like other kind of best people to speak to about it, and we'll be able to give you all the kind of guidance. Is there any other questions that have come in?
Yes. So, I mean, I think possibly part of your answer already covers this, but what is the appropriate retention period for hard copy files and data stored physically? I'm guessing some of this is down to the necessity of how long you should keep it, but I'm not sure if that's if you this is your area, not mine.
So again, so research data, it has that, depending on the study, 10 to 20 years retention period. For physical copies, if you were doing like a medical trial or like a medical study which is involving you know, like medicine or things like that, those things have to be retained within hard copy. If that amount of file is, if those are met, it's only within the first, I think you've got to have your findings published, and then within 12 months you can digitalize that kind of hard copy material. If you're not working on that, you can, at the end of your project, digitalize those hard copies and securely destroy the hard copies. That means within your castle walls, so within your organization, you'll have either, you see the kind of confidential waste bins, or there'll be like a shred, something like that. But it's got to be an appropriate way within your university. You usually, if you go to like secretary office or retention policies, you'll find more information about that. But yeah, if you're not working on a medical trial, you can digitize those digitize that hard copy material, and then it has the same retention period, which is like 10 to 20 years. But it makes it's just because we've had this as well, like things of the policy. I feel like the policy landscape has changed, especially after COVID, because you can't, the storage costs of keeping everything in hard copy, and it is going to just grow and grow and grow. So that there's now like more digital things that is acceptable.
So we also have another couple of questions. One is somebody asking, I wonder if you should. So it's I wonder if you meant that consent forms should not include data usage in them, and they should be a separate form.
Was that about the demographics question, I think, that came up? I think that was in relation to that.
I think it might be yes.
Yeah, it was so if when you're writing out your consent form, you don't want things in it about like their age and sex and stuff like that, just because it's like additional information which should be kept separate. Like the focus of the consent form should be, are you taking part in this study, and yeah, do you agree to that? I hope that's clearer. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's grand. Another one is what about, and this is, I think, data retention. What about personal information in files that are 80 plus years old? Does it stay personal forever?
That's such a good question. And no, it doesn't. I've had this. So in my past life as an archivist, I've come across stuff like this where you've found, you've gone through, opened a box, and there's been information about employment history and like, people's personal information in there. It doesn't. No, there's a fine line, isn't there, of when things kind of become archive material. This is probably a question for an archivist or for the university archivist, or definitely that sounds like a kind of record keeper question within your institutional organization. For research data, which is what I can answer here today, then that personal information is typically deleted at the end of the study. I'm sorry that wasn't like the fantastic question, but there's definitely speak to like your secretary's office or the record keeper at your organisation.
I would imagine the archive, as you say, the archive themselves would also be able to provide information on that too. Great, thank you for that. No more questions.
Thank you. This was just going back to the kind of like clear, plain language. So I understand the anonymized research data will be shared as open data. So that means it'll be publicly available and may be used for purposes not related to the study. and then you start again. And then I understand the anonymized research data will be shared under access restrictions. This means they're available to authenticated researchers upon application. It's about keeping, using really plain, clear language, so it's really easy to understand who is going to have access to that research data at the end of it. So yeah, top tips again. So this participants then should be aware of where kind of personal information and research data is stored, who has access, and what the retention and destruction schedule is, as those data transfers should be stored separately, and they're going to have different retention schedules and requirements. Again, you can find kind of further guidance of that on your local institution web pages, either from the record keeping offices or research data services, things like that. Withdrawal. So there's should be 2 clear points of withdrawal, which again, this is something that kind of comes up. I didn't talk about it in that sort of section, but it does come up a lot that we see. So you should have one, like a withdrawal saying for participation at any time, and then a specific date or timeline for research data. If you're planning to anonymize your research data, it's going to undermine your anonymization process, and it's going to be just an administrative nightmare for you if you say your research data can be withdrawn at any time. So give it a date. Also then be clear about the research data sharing. So who is going to have access? Is it publicly available or only available to researchers upon application? It's good practice to like name a research repository if you can, as it gives your participants a searchable name so they can go and look up terms and conditions of use. Sorry, my dog just barked and it just made me jump. And then also the kind of use words store and share, not archive. Archive as a word just can be so easily misinterpreted to mean like kind of both things, either share with the world or store under lock and key. So your wording really should be simple and clear. And again, like we're here to help. So make sure you kind of email your local research support team using the library if you want any advice. And then just to quickly just kind of go through 2 sort of things on like collecting sensitive data. So first of all, you want to make sure that it's secure from the point of collection. So that's using encrypted devices for data collection and then transferring to secure storage as soon as possible. And also, as I mentioned earlier, about using encryption tools as well, so things like 7-zip. You want to be using institutionally approved transcription, scanning, digitization, and video conferencing services. You can usually find information about that again either on the Secretary's Office web pages or on IT services offices web pages as well. Also, check where your recordings are being saved. That kind of mantra of inside the castle walls. So I know with Teams, they're usually saved into the local drive of whoever the host is of the Teams meeting. But things like Zoom, so when Bristol used to have Zoom, it was saved onto like a kind of the Zoom's like cloud server. So we'd always tell people to make sure they transfer those like as soon as they finished at the end of the meeting. And also then just sort of storing personal data for administrative purposes separately to your research data. You also then, when you come to like anonymizing sensitive data, from the start, like minimize what you collect. So what are your minimum variables needed? What level of precision is needed? Can you mask any identifiers at the kind of point of collection? And you also want to anonymize as early as possible and as far as possible. So as like much as you can do early on. It also helps to kind of keep a log of changes at the start, just so you can kind of keep so you have like a consistent approach throughout, especially if you're going through a lot of like transcripts or things like that. You also then want to think about direct identifiers such as like name, email addresses, indirect, age, sex, geographical location, ethnicity, but also like the data environment too. So the kind of outside risks outside the data set. So mentioning of like third parties, or if there's a published protocol which links it to another data set or website, which could identify the geographical area. We have it a lot with news articles. That's what people always, if people mention like something in the news or like something, maybe they've won an award or something. It's things like that which kind of then you break down and you can kind of identify who people are. So you want to think about that kind of knowledge outside of things as well. There's also software that can help. So the UK Data Service has this text anonymisation helper tool, which is really, really useful. Again, the UK Data Service is great. It's got a number of other tools as well for anonymising qualitative and statistical data. The important thing to note if you're looking at tools is obviously using trustworthy resources, but ensure they're locally installed. So therefore, like, you download those, install them on your PC. So they're not reliant on any like external servers or unrestricted cloud servers. You want to keep that information again in the castle walls, in your kind of secure university network. Okay, and again, speak to your local research support team as well. Okay, so you've done all your due diligence. You're now ready to share your research data. So data sharing. As I said at the beginning, data sets should be treated as publications in their own right. So this means, include it in your research profile, but also think about how it should be understood without an accompanying research article. Like data without its context is meaningless. So your documentation is that communication of what your data sets are about. Again, being transparent about your research process going to make your research data more accessible. It's going to lead to more citations and collaborations for your research. And if you think about research is only looking at what articles you cite in your paper, then you're going to be, or then who you cite in your paper, that kind of thing. Yeah, you're going to be missing out on a large part of that research. Hugh Shannon's a meta researcher at Royal Holloway, and they think about it as like a cellular model. So like kind of think about it in small parts. So your research uses this software, this data, this methodology, and these papers, and then it creates that data, software, and papers, which are then used and cited by others. And again, it's best practice, which also means you have to do it, to be compliant with funders' policies. And most journals also expect you to include a data availability statement, which cites the data and a pin in your journal article. As I said before, PGRs are normally encouraged as well to share their research data under institutional open research policies. So I'd recommend like checking if your institution has one of those, what expected of you, and also what support is available. So many funders, such as UKRI, expect research data to be shared in a recognised or responsible repository. That's normally the terminology they use. And essentially that just means a research data repository that, yeah, it has those kind of features that it's like findable, and it's also just like not dependent on maybe long-term funding or like maintenance, like maybe like a project website would be. So what then are research data repositories, and how do you select which one is best for you? So we recommended looking at funder or discipline-specific research data repositories. So things like Archaeology Data Service, Heritage Science Data Service, things like that. You can use the Registry of Research Data Repositories, which is that re3data.org, to find a suitable repository for your work. Commercial repositories like Figshare, Dryad, Zenodo, those sort of options as well. Also university research data repositories. So at Bristol, we've got DataBriz, but there's things like BARSPAR data as well. You may want to look into what how you publish on those. So like, for example, on at Bristol, PGRs need to go through their supervisors in order to publish on their behalf. So why should we use them? So they offer long-term preservation of data sets. So they have those persistent identifiers, as we talked about earlier. So that kind of unique identifier that follows and is only attributed to that data set, such as a DOI. Those are internationally searchable. They also have structured metadata, so they're indexed for discoverability. Each data set is going to have a landing page with descriptive metadata explaining authorship and contents, and it also will have a clear and established license for reuse as well. Some repositories will offer options for publishing sensitive data with like clear governance for access and use. So for example, at Bristol, we have restricted and controlled and open data sets. And all of our sensitive data sets undergo something called a disclosure risk assessment before going to publication. And we also have a kind of clear application process and decision process, which is all being agreed by like the legal department, which is like clearly on our website as well, so everyone can see how to access that data and how to apply for it. Okay, so your data is all organized, you deposit it in a repository, and you're now ready to publish your article, your thesis or your monograph or anything. So now you need to cite your data in a data availability statement. So a good data availability statement, it should describe where research data is located and how it can be accessed. And also include that kind of unique identifier, so either a DOI or a session number, so that, and if there are any restrictions or conditions to access. Do not say data available on request is not sufficient. A lot of funders don't accept it, and also a lot of journals now don't accept it. And it also, it's not transparent, and it's not transparent or a process of where your data is or accessible. There was a study quite recently, which there was an author that contacted, I think it was like just under 2,000 authors who had put like research data available on request, and it was only like 14% that replied, and only 7% provided the data. So it's just it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Definitely do all your due diligence and make sure that people can access your data. It's fine to say that you didn't generate any new data or that you've cited the data in the article. If there isn't a specific space for a data availability statement, then we suggest putting it maybe in the acknowledgement section. Your kind of institutional web pages and libguides, again, they're going to have guidance and advice, and also like kind of suggested statements as well. So I've got two there, but if you are interested on data on the Bristol website, there's it's like a kind of choose your own adventure thing where you can say like, okay, this is my data and this is it, and then it'll kind of give you a statement that you can pop in. So how do you keep yourself on track? So throughout your project, you should just keep asking yourself, are my actions making my data fair? So the fair data principles are that it should be findable. So during the project then, is your file structure clear? Is it sorted in your institutional network? Is it stored in your institutional network? And after the project, is your data registered or indexed in a searchable resource such as a repository? And is it using a unique and persistent identifier like a DOI? Is it accessible? So are there in clear instructions or metadata for access? Is it interoperable? So is it easy to understood? So that's through the use of like open formats, industry agreed formats, again, structured metadata and standards, that clear file naming, common data dictionaries and terminology as well. Is it reusable? So is it easy to be used? So is it well documented, formatted, described? Is there a README text which cover the necessary information to use the data? Has it been published with a license that are clear in terms of reuse? So then by considering all those principles, you're taking part in a process that ensures the production of knowledge is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable, but also your research data is accessible, which means you and others are always going to be able to find, understand, and use your research data. Who to ask for support? So this is a list of all the email addresses that you can speak to people in your institutions about anything that I've covered here today. You can also check out your local web pages and libguides as well for institutional specific support. And I'm also here now to answer any questions as well. So yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Jade. And also thank you to Kate, who has been facilitating all the questions coming in. I think it was a very useful session, judging by the comments.
So sorry as well that it went over by a few minutes. I've only just realised because I've been in a slide bubble.
That's okay. And can I just say, if you are Bristol based, then now you know of Jade and of Kate, very knowledgeable, very helpful contacts at the library here at the University of Bristol. If you're not Bristol based, make sure to check your library services for also very knowledgeable staff that can help you in this regard and in other aspects of research. Have we managed to answer all the questions that have come in? I know
I
we're not on.
think so. Have a quick look in the chat as well, Jade. I've done my best with some of those questions, but I can't promise to be perfect because it's not my area.
I'm sure you've done a great job. I will look through things and try it, because I think I'll still have access to this at the end as well. But yeah,
I'd just like to as well, on behalf of Jade, and I thank the Southwest Doctoral Training Partnership for having us along, because it's been wonderful. Certainly, session I did, and I can see from doing the chat that you know, people have been so engaged. It's great for us.
Yeah, it's really great to see. So thank you. And yes, make sure you speak to your local research data librarians, because yeah, they are going to be very knowledgeable, and you just don't know sometimes that they're in the library, but that's usually where they are, either the library or research teams or in repository teams. And yeah, thank you all for coming and all your questions and engaging with me today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, great. There is just one more question that's just come. I don't know if Jade or Kate are in a rush, but if
no, it's fine. Yeah, I don't mind. It's okay.
Yeah, so let's see. Regarding previous slide, a previous slide's point, this study did not generate new data. Doesn't every study generate new data, or does new data only mean new primary empirical data?
So if you are, say you're doing like work on, so say you're doing work like reviewing certain like papers or like documentation or things like that, you might not necessarily be creating generating new data, or you might be reusing other studies data. So you're not necessarily creating new data sets from that. It might be just notes or analysis or things like that.
Yeah, and in secondary, in quantitative research, it's quite common to be using secondary data, doing secondary data analysis on large data sets that someone else has collected.
I think that's answered, because there's a thank you to that.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. If that is it, then I think I will now close this session. So again, thank you very much to everyone who's stayed on to the end for attending. There are obviously more sessions coming along in the webinar series, all on doing different types of data analysis. I've already put a link to that page, a ticket tailor page, if you'd like to have a look, if you haven't registered already. But in the meantime, thank you very much for coming along, and we hope to see you at the next session.